Hello everyone, welcome to Software Testing Help. I'm Sharmila and in this video we'll discuss how to maintain a keyword driven framework. So this video is a continuation of a previous session wherein we saw how to maintain a separate library file and also we saw few examples of adding keywords in the library file. And then we also had an idea of creating a basic test case template and how to add test steps inside the test case template depending upon the library jar files and how to add the other parameters also. And we also had an understanding of maintaining a separate object repository like this. So in this video we'll be mainly focusing on writing the main logic which helps us to read each and every test case inside my Excel sheet and also go through each and every test step and perform the main execution. So that is what we'll be mainly focusing on in today's session. Now let's get started. So here if you have a look at the test case template, you can see that each and every test sheet corresponds to a test case. And inside each sheet I have test steps which are split into rows. Okay, so now my keyword driven framework has to recognize these test sheets, read all the test sheets and read each and every test step and perform the execution. So now consider that I'm doing this manually, I'm not using any framework. So how do we do it? I open this workbook, go to the first sheet, read my first line which is my first test step row, perform the execution. Once that is done, I read the second line, perform the execution, and then read the third line, perform the execution. And once this test case is done, I go to the second test case. Similarly, I read each and every row and do the execution. So that is how we do it manually. So the same thing I need my keyword driven framework to handle. So in this case I'm just having two test cases, so I might have 100 test cases in one Excel workbook. So I would want my framework to read all the all the test sheets which are nothing but the test cases and read all the test steps and perform the execution. So that I'm going to handle it using an iteration sequence. So my basic idea is that I'll iterate across all the test sheets. So test sheets corresponds to the test case. I will iterate across test sheets. So how many ever test sheets are there? Everything will be read over. And then inside each test sheet, I will iterate across each and every row, which is nothing but the test steps in my case. So each row is a test step. So I will iterate across each row. And once every row is iterated, as and when every row is iterated, I will iterate across the parameters inside it, which is nothing but the columns in my Excel sheet. So my iteration will go in three sequence: first iterating across the sheets, and then across the rows, and then across the columns. So once every iteration is complete, I will then call my execution action, which helps me to execute the test cases. Okay, so now we'll see how I'm going to do that. Now let me write the main logic. So first I'll create an object from a WebDriver. So before writing any automation code, you start by creating an object. And after this, I'm just going to locate my current project's workspace. So for that, I have a function called system.getProperty of user directory. So this will locate my current project workspace. So this is my project, right? Keyword framework. So when I right click and go to properties, you can see where it is actually located. So this location is a kind of dynamic location that changes depending upon where you place your project. So maybe tomorrow I'll place it in another location. So in that case, I don't want my project workspace to get hard coded. So I'm just getting the current project workspace using this function. So this in turn I'm assigning it to a variable called path. So now my current project workspace is set. Now I'm going to create a method wherein I'll put my main logic to read the contents inside my Excel sheet. So I'm going to create a method called read Excel and execute. Okay, so now I need to access the contents inside my Excel sheet. So before accessing the Excel sheet, I need to recognize its location. So my Excel sheet is placed inside the project workspace. This is my project workspace under which I have a folder called externals followed by a, a test case Excel sheet whose name is testcases.xls. So I will say my Excel sheet is under my project workspace. From there, go to the folders called externals and then go to the testcases.xls file. So this in turn I'm assigning it to a variable Excel file path. So now Excel file path is the path that contains the location of my actual Excel sheet. So now my Excel sheet path is set. Now next I need to open my Excel sheet. So in order to access my Excel sheet or open it, I have a class called file input stream. So I create an object for that class, and using that object I'm trying to open my Excel workbook. So this is the location of the Excel workbook, which is under that particular externals folder test cases.xls, which in turn is inside in a variable called Excel file path. So I just pass that variable over here. So now I've opened my Excel file sheet. Next, I need to access the contents. I need to open and go inside each and every sheet, read every column, every row, and do the process. So before trying to access the sheets, rows, and columns, uh, I should have permission to actually access or go into that Excel sheet. So I have a separate library file called poi.jar. So I've added it inside my dependencies. You can see it over here. So once you added it inside your dependencies, you will be able to use a class called XSSF workbook, using which you can access the contents inside your Excel workbook. So I just created an object for that, and I'm telling that this workbook is already opened using file input stream, okay, which in turn is located in this particular location. So now I've opened my Excel workbook. Next I need to access the number of sheets and then iterate across each and every sheet. That is my first job, right? So I should iterate across the test cases, which is nothing but the test sheets. So before that, I should get the total number of sheets. Only then I can iterate across all the test cases. So for that, using the object workbook, I'm calling a method called get number of sheets, which will return the active number of sheets present inside my Excel workbook. So this I'm assigning it to an integer variable. So I'll just print this out and show it to you so that you'll have an idea of what I'm telling. I'll just run it, run as testng. So here you can see the total test cases count got printed as 3. Now when I go back to my test case template sheet, the total active number of test case sheets is 3, but not all the 3 sheets are test cases. The last sheet is just a reference sheet which has all the keywords from a library file. So my test cases count will be total number of count minus 1. So what I'll do is I'll just include a minus 1 over here. So now my total test case count will change to 2. Okay. So how much ever test cases I have, those test sheets will be read, and the total number of test sheets will be returned over here. So now I have my total number of test sheets. I need to iterate across each and every test sheet now. So I'm just creating a for loop. I'm starting with index 0. To iterate across each sheet, I have a method. Sorry, to open each sheet, I have a method called get sheet at. So using the object workbook, I call the method get sheet at. So if the index here is 0 for the first iteration, it will go to the sheet with index 0. So my sheet starts with index 0, 1, 2, and so on. And for the next iteration, get sheet at 1 will go and read the second sheet with index 1 and so on. So that is how it works. So here I will just fill in my test case variable. Okay, so this test case variable is what that will get iterated across. So let me assign it to a worksheet. So this in turn is nothing but a worksheet. So I'm assigning it to a worksheet. So let me print this out and show it to you how it works. So here I'm printing the test case index and also the worksheet name. So worksheet dot get sheet name will return the current worksheet that I have invoked. So now let me run it. Run as testng. Okay, so now what happened is that total number of test cases count was 2. It read the total number of test cases, and for index 0, it started from index 0. So workbook dot get sheet at 0 index. So this 0 got printed over here. That is the test case index. And then worksheet dot get name, which is nothing but worksheet is the sheet with index 0. So this is the sheet with index 0. It got the name of that worksheet and printed it over here. So that is what got printed. Similarly, for the next iteration, the value was 1. So get sheet at index 1. So this worksheet will now hold the sheet with index 1, which is the second sheet. So when I say worksheet dot get sheet name, it will return me the value of the second sheet, and the index is 1. Okay, so now you saw how the iteration works across the sheets, test sheets, which is nothing but the test cases. Now here is where my test case execution starts. So I will initiate my driver over here, and I will close my driver at the end. I'll just add a statement, print statement saying this test case is executed. Test case with test case name. Maybe I'll put the name here. So worksheet dot get sheet name is the test case name, is executed. Okay, so for now I've just iterated across the sheets. I haven't read the rows and I haven't read the parameters, but I will do it here inside my for loop. But since my test case has already started, I'm initiated my driver and I'm closing my driver here. So here I have two more iterations pending, wherein I should iterate across the rows and across the columns. So let us do that iteration now. So as I told, I have iterated across the test cases. Next, I should iterate across each test step, which is nothing but the rows inside my Excel sheet. So for that, I should get the total number of rows inside each sheet and then iterate across each row. Now the row iteration, I should do it from the worksheet. So using the object of my worksheet, I call a method called get last row number. So when I say get last row number, it will return the last row with non-empty value. So this is the last row with non-empty value, which has the number 4. Similarly, for the second test case, my last row is, sorry, 11, which is the total number of rows inside this Excel sheet. So this get last row number is returning the total number of rows in each sheet. So this in turn, I'm assigning it to another variable. This gives me the total row count. So now I'm going to iterate across the rows. I'm using this row count and that is helpful for my iteration. So from the iteration, I'm starting it from 1. The reason being, I'll go with iterating the row with index 1 because my row starts with index 0, 1, 2, and 3. So 0 index just holds the header, so I'm just avoiding that row and going with the first row. So I'm going with first row from the first row until the total number of rows in the Excel sheet. Now let me print this index value. So I'm just printing the row index value along with the first column in my row. So I say worksheet dot get row. So worksheet dot get row followed by I, that is get row of 1, will return this entire row, and then after this I'm just adding another function called get cell of 1. So when I say get cell of 1, it just takes the first column. Okay, similarly when I say get cell of, I'm not taking 1, rather I'm taking 0 because my cell again starts with count 0, 1, 2, and 3. So the index goes as 0, 1, 2, and 3. So similarly when it's reading the second row, it will read the entire row, and from that I'm getting the first cell. So this value I'm just printing it out to make sure that the iteration process is happening in a sequence manner. So let me just run this out. Now for now we are not doing any execution, we are just doing the iteration part. So I'm just commenting out this driver because the driver will get opened unnecessarily. So I'm just commenting this for now. Let me run it to just check whether the iteration is happening correctly. Okay, so now let's understand what happened here. So the total test case count got printed as 2, and then from the first test case with index 0, it took the index as 0 and then went to the get sheet at with index 0. So it went to the sheet with index 0 and printed out the sheet name. So worksheet dot get sheet name printed out the sheet with index 0 over here. You can see that, and once that particular worksheet is recognized, it took the total number of rows. So our total number of rows is 4 in this case, and it's starting from the first row, the row with index 1. So from the first row, it's just printing out the row index 1. So the row value was 1, and then after that we just printed out the first cell inside each row. So worksheet dot get row of 1. So this is worksheet dot get row of 1, which is inside a cell 0. This is 1 comma 0, so this got printed over here. Similarly for the next iteration, so this is inside a loop, right? This is inside a loop. Next iteration the value will be 2. So in that case here my get row will be 2 comma 0. So 2 comma 0 is the next cell, so it printed out the next cell, and 3 comma 0 so on, and after that my iteration loop got ended. And now it shifted to the second worksheet with index, sorry, it's second worksheet which has the name tc2, so that got read, and you can see that got printed over here, verify login success. And similarly each and every test step was read, each and every row was read, iterated, and the first element was printed, first cell was printed. Okay, so now you can see that the iteration across sheets and iteration across each and every test step is a success. Next, what I need to do, I need to iterate across each and every column, right? So these two we completed, we iterated across the test cases, across the test steps. Next I should iterate across the parameters. So let us do that now. Now to iterate across my columns using the same object worksheet, I'm calling a method called get row of 0. Row of 0 is nothing but my first row, and get the last cell number. So this corresponds to the first row with index 0 and the last cell number. So this is the last cell number with a non-empty string value. So this will be considered as the last cell number, which is nothing the total number of columns. So this in turn I'm assigning it to another variable called column. So now I will add this iteration of column inside the row iteration loop. So here I will put the column iteration loop. Okay, so again I'm starting it with index 0 because my column starts from 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. Now I'll just print the column index value here. Next, what I need to do is once I iterate across the columns, I should get the text inside each and every column. Here you can see that some columns, that is some parameters are empty, whereas some parameters have data inside it. So in order to distinguish between empty data and parameters with data, I'm just checking if it is null. If it is null, I'm assigning it as a null value. If not, I'm getting the string value. So I'm just telling first you go to the worksheet, go to that particular row. So I'm iterating across the row. So if it is the first row, it will go to the first row and then go to the particular cell. That also is good to, is included in my iteration. So this is the iteration for the first loop, and this is the iteration for the second loop. So for the first time my row value will be 1 and my column value will be 0, and then 1 comma 0, then it will become 1 comma 1, 1 comma 2, 1 comma 3. So this iteration will continue until all the columns are completed. So once this first row is done, what will happen, this row value I will change to 2. So next it will be 2 comma 0, 2 comma 1, 2 comma 2, and so on. Okay, so now you got the idea of how this is iterating across. So here in this case, this is the first row with column 0, and this is the first row with column 1, and this is first row with column 2. Similarly, this is the second row with column 1, this is second row with column 2, and so on. So this is how I said 1 comma 1, 1 comma 0, 2 comma 2, 1 comma 2, and so on. Okay, so that is how the iteration will go over here. So this in turn is actually a return type of a cell. So I'll assign it to a cell variable, cell criteria. So here I will check if this particular cell is empty or not. If it is empty, I'll assign it to an empty string, or else I'm getting the string cell value and assigning it to another string variable. Okay, so in order to help us know whether it is empty or not. So my idea here basically is I will read all the parameters and I'm going to put it in a list. So as and when I read every row, I'm going to create a list, and when I'm iterating every column, I will put each value that I'm iterating inside the list. So here you can see that when my row is getting read, I'm creating a list. So now after all the column, after each and every column is read, so this is the iteration loop for my column. It starts here and ends here. So here I will add the code to add all the criteria that I'm reading. So for the first time, now consider the first row if I'm reading. So for the first time, what will happen is it will read the first cell and put it inside the list. And next it will read the second cell. It is empty. So it will put the empty thing inside the list. And third is also empty. It will put the empty thing inside the list. And next you can see the fourth has a string. So that will be put inside the list. And so on. So what will happen is for each row, a list will get created. So once this list is created, I will then call a function which performs the execution of this list. So here I will call my function which performs the execution of this list. Okay, so this function will do the execution part once everything gets added into the list. So this list, I will take it out and get pass the parameters inside the function. Now I'll show it how. Now, before understanding this function part, let us see how this list is getting created. So I'll just print the list over here. I'll print the list over here, and let me show you how it's getting executed. So let me run this, run as testng. Okay, so what happened here? The test case count is 2, and then get sheet at index 0. It got the sheet at index 0. It printed out the sheet name TC1 with index 0. So this is the sheet with index 0. Next, it iterated across the rows inside that sheet. So let me show it to you. So after this, it went inside the row with index 1. So row value was 1 here, and you can see that the first thing got printed, so it went to the first row, and inside that row it has to read each and every column. So next comes my column iteration, and here I'm reading each and every column. So here my row value is 1 and my column value is 0. It read the first thing called enter URL. Once it read it, it verified that it is a string value, it is not null, so it added it inside the list. And next, this next value was null. It added the null value inside the list. The third value was also null, so it added the third value null inside the list. The fourth value had a data, it entered the data value inside the list. Similarly, the other two values were null, so those null value were also inside the list. So now my list got created for the first row. So similarly, this iteration proceeded for my second row as well. So when you see the console, the next row is read, row value 2 is read, the row value is 2 over here, and then it iterated across each and every column inside this loop and added everything inside the list. So second, I didn't have any other parameters, so everything was empty. So let's see this third one. You see that every data got entered inside the list. This is my third test case, sorry, third test step. So all the parameters got added inside the list. So this is the parameters over here. I'll just scroll it over. Everything got added inside the list, contains http get current URL, etc. Okay, so now what I'll do is I have my list ready with all the parameters. So my main job will be using this particular list. I will just call a function and pass all the parameters from here as the parameter to that particular function. Okay, so now I'm going to split my list. I will split my list in such a way that the first element I always assume as the test step, because that is how I have designed. The first is the test step, and then object name, locator type, test data, assertion type, expected value, actual value. So this is how I have designed my test case template, and that is how my list is also read. So the first value will always be a test step, and then will be an object name, and then locator type, and then test data, and then assertion type, and then expected value, actual value. So that is how I'm going to split my list now. So let me split the list and show you. So here you can see that this is my list test execution, and each data in the list or each element inside the list, I'm splitting it into separate parameters like this. I'm assigning it to separate variables, and this variable in turn I'm passing as parameters inside a function. Okay, so my function is ready. I have read all the parameters for each row for each test step, and my function call is ready. So this call will be made each and every time that particular test step is read. So here I'm going to write the implementation for my function. So now I'm creating a function, and here the first parameter is the keyword parameter, because the first thing is always the keyword. So using the keyword, I will read the particular keyword and make the call inside my library file. So using switch case statement, I will first recognize my keyword, and I will say if the keyword is so and so, if the keyword is enter URL, then I will make a call to my library file. This is the object for my library class file, and I will call that particular method called enter URL. But when you go inside this method, you will see that it requires one or more parameters. Let me show you. When I go inside this method, you can see that it is requiring a driver parameter and a test data parameter. So I need to pass those parameters as well when I'm calling that method. So those parameters, I'm already passing it from my Excel sheet. I already got it from my Excel sheet. I'm just passing it over. Similarly for the other keywords as well, I'll just add the case statements like this. If it is get current URL, I call that particular method. If it is type, I call that particular method and pass those parameters required by reading it from my Excel sheet. Okay, as simple as that. So similarly for my assertions, I will split my assertions like this. What I'm doing here is I'm reading my assertion. If my assertion contains assert URL, I am calling that particular assertion assert URL contains or assert URL equals. If it is assert element, I'm calling that particular assertion from my library class file. So that is what I'm doing in my function implementation. So here in my function implementation, I'm just reading the first parameter, and then depending upon that particular function, I'm making a call to my library file here, and I'm passing the other parameters if required for that particular function. Okay, so here basically what we do is we are iterating across the sheets, first iteration, and then iterating across the row, second iteration, and then iterating across the column, third iteration. So once the 3 iterations is complete, I am creating a list wherein I read all the parameters and add it inside a list, and then from the list I am passing all the parameters as a function likewise, and then I'm giving a call to the function, and inside the function I'm just adding the implementation, which is nothing but the call to the library class files. Okay, so this is how I'm designing my keyword driven framework. So now when I run it, how will it recognize? It should go to this first test case, read the first test step, execute it. Read the second test step, execute it. Read the third test step, execute it. After this is done, it should go to the second test case and do the execution. Okay, so let us see how it is happening. I'll just uncomment this one because I want my execution to happen. And now let me run this code. So here you can see the driver got initiated for my first test case. I'll keep my console open side by side. Now the first test step is getting executed, just entering the URL, and then it should assert for the URL. The next test step is it should get the current URL and it should assert. Now you can see that the second test step also got executed and it got passed assert URL, right? And the expected text and the actual text were the same. And now it's proceeding to the second test case, wherein it has to enter valid username and password. Okay, so this is how my test case execution is happening. I can have 100 test cases in my test case workbook sheet. I just have to code this main part wherein it helps me to read each and every test sheet, iterate across my rows and columns, and then get the parameters inside the row, and then make a call to my execution function. That's it. That is the main logic that I have written in my keyword driven framework, and that I can use for executing any number of test cases. I hope you got a good understanding of designing a basic keyword driven framework. Thank you.